here on the programme. Pleasure to get your insight as always. We now move over to the United States, where a police officer has been killed after a gunman opened fire outside the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. Authorities say that at least 4 CDC buildings were struck by bullets, but no employees were injured. The shooter was later found dead in a nearby building, armed with multiple firearms. His motive so far remains unknown. The fallen officer, David Rose, was a Marine Corps veteran and a recent police academy graduate. CDC staff will work remotely on Monday as a security review is carried out. Georgia's governor praised first responders for their swift action. Meanwhile, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens says that no civilians were injured, while calling for a national reflection of the rise in mass shootings. Listen in to what the mayor of the city had to say.
At this time, there have been no civilian casualties, but this was an active shooter incident. The shooter is now deceased. The campus is, there are no threats on the campus currently, but we still have an active investigation. Atlanta Police Department will be the investigating party. And so we ask that while things are safe, that you don't drive in that part of campus, because we need to make sure that the investigation goes through without any obstruction.
We're now joined by Andrew Latham, who's a professor of international relations. He joins us live from Minnesota. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Pleasure to have you on. This is the second shooting that's happened today. Another shooting has also occurred in New York City in Times Square with 3 people injured. How does this incident fit into the broader trend of mass shootings in the United States?
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. There's a couple of things going on in this country, which the intersection of which gives rise to these shooting incidents. One of which, obviously, is the enabling reality that guns are readily available. All sorts of guns, from handguns to assault weapons, basically, readily available on the streets and in stores around this country. So that's an enabling factor. But what is the driving factor behind many of these mass shootings? Well, they vary. Some of them are politically motivated, some of them are psychologically motivated, and some of them are both at the same time. And this seems to be one of those cases where it's both at the same time. This now dead shooter seemed to have had psychological issues. His father reported him earlier in the day as being suicidal. I'm sure that as the investigation unfolds, his various pathologies, psychological conditions will be revealed. But he also had a political motive in that he blamed the COVID vaccine for his medical conditions, which apparently were in decline. And so he wanted retribution. So of course he went to the Center for Disease Control, which was, in his mind at least, the center of the problem of mass inoculations, which caused, in his mind, twisted as it is, mass illnesses. And there's a third element which has to be considered here as well, which we'll discover over time, this phenomenon of death by cop. If you are actually suicidal and don't think for whatever reason that you can pull the trigger, you put yourself in the line of fire so that you have a police officer pull the trigger for you, as it were. And that seems to have been the case here. So complicated situation, both psychological and sociological, and that's where we are today.
Andrew, you of course insinuated there that part of the suspects' aim were political in this attack. What's your analysis of the rise of political violence and the state of political violence, the continuation of political violence in the United States currently?
Well, again, a couple of factors at play, one of which is radical polarization. It used to be that people could interact with people on the other side of any given political debate. They had friends on the other side of that political debate. The other side was humanized in that respect. And that has undergone a radical change over the last 10, 15 years. And we have essentially 2 silos now, a right-leaning, often evangelical, certainly pro-Trump silo, if you like, and on the other hand, a very progressive, anti-Trump, liberal silo on the other side, and never the two shall speak. And so it's easier once you've demonized the other in that way. It's easier to carry out these kinds of attacks. So that's one thing that's going on. And then there's also been a politicization in the sense that a large chunk of Americans no longer have faith in government. That can be local government, state government, but especially federal government, which can be quite distant and which is perceived to be the enemy. So when things go pear-shaped in this country, when things go wrong, people with the sociological and psychological guardrails have gone away, which enables them to acquire these easily accessed weapons and make what they think is a profound political statement. And that often involves attacking the institutions, the CDC in this case, but often the police. But very often it is just random. It is an attack on the other, and that can be just average, everyday human beings who don't share your views or whom you perceive don't share your views on this big political topic or that big political topic.
Andrew, some brilliant insight there. Thank you very much for that. Do stay with us as we discuss